Naturally, we're starting with the conversation around Nigeria's inflation figures. We had talked about whether or not it dropped, but hey, it didn't drop. It would only drop if you're using the same weight or the same measurements to measure it. But this is a different measurement entirely, or at least the parameters are different. So for those who are saying it may have dropped, well, the numbers look like it dropped, right? When you look at what it was before, 30-something to over 20-something. But in reality, it didn't quite drop. But let's speak with the experts on the show this morning so you understand what is it we're dealing with here, because whether it's called the CPI or inflation figures, it deals with your pocket and how much you purchase items, either they're rare items or everyday items. And we're joined on the program right here in our Lagos studio by Dr. Titilayo Fowokon, who's a member of Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN. We also have Professor Adeolu Adenikinju, who's a professor, Department of Economics, University of Ibadan, and also the Nigerian Economic Society president. Prof, you're welcome to the morning brief.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And Doctor, you're welcome as well.
Good morning.
Naturally, I'll just want to begin with Prof, because you've seen this for a long time now. How do Nigerians approach the new inflation figures? Well, the NBS calls it the CPI, but to break it down to people, this is also the inflation figure. So when you see what it is now, Prof, at 24.48%, what we had before was 34.8. How should Nigerians see this figure? Is it a drop?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Kaude. You said it all in your introduction. It's not actually a drop. Okay, what the MBS has done is to simply align, our inflation figures to something that is more realistic. Okay, that reflect current realities, that reflect current consumption behaviors of Nigerians. Okay, and that is the international best practices. Okay, the consensus, as it were, or the norm is that every 5 years the base will be adjusted because the economy is very dynamic. Things change all of the time, and therefore the measurements, of inflation, the CPI, which is a measure of increase in prices, we also have to adjust in order to reflect the reality that people live in. So, like you said, what has just changed is the weighting. Okay, that is the key thing that has changed in this index that we have. In other words, some of the products that we have more products now. Before we were looking at about 780 products. Now we have over 934 products that are being considered. Okay, some activities that were not there or were not prominent, in 2009, the last base year, now that are very significant, had to be reflected. Okay, and again, we must also know that because of the reality of the price, economic reforms, that came in 2023, the removal of subsidy, the exchange rate adjustments, Nigerians' behaviors have changed. Okay, you don't have many Nigerians now filling their cars when they go to petrol stations. Okay, you don't have many Nigerians now eat some of the luxurious foods. So things have changed. Okay, so the weight of some of those goods in our consumption basket have changed. So what the CBN, what the MBS has done is that they have been able to reflect the new, more realistically, if I can use that, the consumption behavior of Nigerians, okay, so that the measure of inflation we have now is more realistic than what we had before. And this issue has been on for a while. Let me just quickly mention that because I was on the CBN Monetary Policy Committee, for some time. And the CBN has continually at that time able to dispute the figures that the MBS was releasing because they think that the weight of food, in the CPI basket is not as strong as it, as it was at that time. And the CBN, the study that was carried out in 2023 has also actually shown that a lot of things have changed, and the new measurement, does not say that inflation has reduced. It simply saying that given the current weighting system that we have, this is the measure of inflation that we have.
All right, thank you, Prof. Brilliant explainer there for those who are wondering how to approach this, where to place this. But Dr. Fowokon, maybe another angle to this, just to push this forward and further, as well as how government may want to, couch this, because the target for this government for inflation this year is 15%. Right. So, is this the routes that we are taking to 15%? But more importantly, just to back up what Prof said, how do you approach this figure?
Thank you very much. When I heard 15%, I was like, well, we're optimistic by saying 15%, because I've looked at where we started from. I had to go back to 2015, because we're talking about rebasing. We're rebasing after 15 years. So looking at 2015, and I see that we were in single digits, but towards June, we started moving up the ladder, and it kept on increasing. So what basically has been done is just for the purpose of government policies, for the purpose of monetary policies, for the purpose of businesses. But if you look at the reality of today, the prices of things are still not reflected by the rebasing. Because you find out that when you talk of rebasing, I listened very well and I was told, okay, we're looking at current prices, current economic situation of the country, and then 2024 is more relevant, going by the technical basis of the rebasing. But this is more for the policy side of it, for government decisions. But if you look, what's the real effect? The real effect is actually on the people. Cost of living, has it really, really gone down? And looking at the trend, the rebasing is not a reduction. I don't see it as a reduction, because what we're saying is we're looking at a period where inflation maybe a bit stabilized, comparing that to now. Compared to when you look at when we had subsidies gone, and the aftermath effect, and the oil, and the fuel subsidy, the increase in transport, increase in housing rent, those increases are still there. You get to the market, real prices are still there. So I think this is more for business and government than for the Nigerians that we expect this to be for their benefit. So quite a lot of Nigerians don't really understand why we're talking of rebasing. I must be sincere with us. They're looking at, I need the prices of food to come down.
Simple.
Not that. So you can use this to plan your economy, but I want prices of things to come down. I tried buying things yesterday, and I compared the price. So I was saying, well, is it this expensive? Well, maybe you are not in this country. So I think that's really the thing. We're looking at in absolute terms, are prices of things dropping? Rebasing is more for the economy, it's more for the businesses to plan, for those who want to go to the capital market, for those who want to look at other means of generating their product, reaching out to the tech world and things like that. But when we come to the ordinary man on the street, they want prices down. Food, shelter, clothing, transport, they are critical.
Fantastic setting out for the next question, which would be, what does this mean? What is the implication of this rebasing for the economy, for economic development? Professor Adiola Adenikinju, that would be for you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, what we try to, I mean, we don't say what we are trying to do. What I think the MBS is trying to do, and maybe this will now extend to all the key stakeholders, investors, government, is to be able to have data that is realistic, data that is correct, so that becomes the basis of planning. And we must know that, just like Madam said, at a point, around 2018, if I remember clearly, I was in the CBN Monetary Policy Committee. The inflation figure was coming to about 11%, 11.23%, so it became very sticky and it wasn't going down as part of whatever we were doing at that time. So what really happened is that it's not the base, it's not the value now. The base is not very important. It's what happens subsequently. It's the movement. So from now on, we start seeing, whether by policies of government or exogenous factors, what happens to the base. Is it going to be declining from 24.48, or is it going to be increasing? That's the measure. So this value that we just have now is, in my view, provides just a yardstick, a measuring rod as where we are now. This is the inflation rate. Now, subsequently, we'll start to see movements. Okay, just like it moved from 11% in 2018 to 34%, early, last year or early this year. So we'll start seeing that, as we move on. So the evidence of policy impact, okay, and decisions of economic agents will now be contingent on what happened to now. Will prices start going up? Will they continue to go up? Will they mute? Will they recede? And then on the basis of that, we're able to be now looking at the effectiveness of policy, and then we can then tie it down, because as you know, prices, inflation, some of the measures of macroeconomic stability. What investors are looking for, and what Nigerians, not just investors, and stakeholders, is stability in prices. Okay, you want price to be stable so that you can plan your household budget, so that the economic agents can make plans, okay, either investment decisions or consumption decisions, savings decisions. You want price to be stable. So now we have a base, okay, that is most recent, that reflects, like I said, most current behavior. Because you will note, in 2009, how many people eat out? How many people are spending so much on data, okay, and phone and all of that? Those things were not very important at that time, okay? But a whole lot of things have changed, okay? So a lot of people eat out now. A lot of people order their foods and things like that were not there or not important in 2009 when we had when the last this year where that we just left, okay? So we have a more realistic data that will allow government, that will allow monetary authorities, that will allow investors, that will allow economic agents to make plans. But from now on, we start seeing the impact of policy. If it goes up, it means inflation is increasing. Okay, stability, monetary stability, becomes, it's not being achieved. If it is receding to 15%, then we can start to conclude or make inference that the government is doing what is right. Okay, and I think that will also be beneficial to investors and the rest of people in the economy.
Oh, all right, Prof. Just before I come to Madam in the studio, I think you and Madam here have established what this really means, and this is we now need to check whether whatever President Bola Tinubu is doing is working going forward, because this is a new era in terms of numbers and all of that. But I'm curious for you to speak to how the classification and redistribution in terms of variation of the weight was done. I looked at the numbers. Food and non-alcoholic beverages were reduced from 51 to about 40. And then there was a jump of the restaurant and accommodation services that moved from 1 to about 12, which is meals away from home, which still talks about food technically. I wanted you to speak to some of this, how this number, because if food had remained the way it was, perhaps the numbers would have gone up. But now it has been redistributed. We won't, even in the, what do you call it now, in the restaurant part as well. There's even the accommodation part in the housing, water, electricity, gas, and fuels that have been drastically reduced from 16 to 8. And they say they removed what is considered impute rent of landlord. Of course, they don't pay their own rent. I wanted you to speak to that so that Nigerians can also understand how we came to where we are. Because we're talking about reflecting current reality. And that's the key word here, Prof. I come to Madam as well.
Thank you very much. Like I said, if we look at the current behavior of Nigerians, definitely we'll see some difference, in patterns from what it used to be. I mean, if I drive down my streets now, there are many restaurants, there are many, eateries that are there. People can, we have, the Uber Eats and all of them now that were not there or were not very important, in 2009. Okay, so now CBN, from the last survey, there was the National Standard of Living Survey that was carried in 2023, had shown some recent, the behavior of Nigeria, that people now, a good component of their consumption is not home. They're not buying raw material, not raw food to cook. Okay, they eat out. Okay, and so that has to be reflected. Okay, so they have moved that component of food, from food, to restaurants, because significantly, and I mean, you are in Lagos, or and those who are in Abuja will know that a whole lot of people now don't eat, periodically, if not, regularly, from restaurant. So that is more realistic. So what they've done now is to move that portion, okay, of feeding from food, home food, to eat at a restaurant. So that's what I've asked if we can shift, okay, in the value of the share of restaurants, in the basket. Also, now, how many universities do we have in 2009? How many universities are we having now? So another thing they've done is that, a students' accommodation, okay, as we moved away from housing, okay, code 3 or 4, now also to join I think restaurants or house, So again, that was based on data, and the way that, and to be in line also with international best practices.
All right.
Okay, so on the basis of that, the composition we have now, the weighting that we have, okay, is based on the most recent data about consumer living standards, okay, and it shows, how we distribute our expenditure over the various, items that we have as household. So I think it's data driven in my view, and it's more reflective also of the current behaviors of most Nigerian households.
All right, thank you, Prof. Let me come to Dr. Folko now. So you've said time and again that this is maybe for government, those in business, to plan. And one of the very obvious things that people will be looking at after this is, okay, if the price of food items have moved, now we're very certain of the rate, then our salary, our income should also follow suit and all of that. So maybe you want to add some of the things he said, but what then should government begin to do with this data? Whether or not people agree with it, government businesses, what should we begin to do concretely to ensure that people now feel the impact of policies?
Thank you very much. I think Prof has said quite a lot, but I'll start from the point of the food part of it. The fact that the weight attached to food has reduced doesn't mean the prices have reduced. And if I'm talking as a worker, that is number one need for me. So government should start looking at how do we get stability in terms of price of food. I've heard a lot about agri business. What are we doing to ensure that this translates into a lower price of food? There was a time we talked about insecurity, and because of that, the farmers can go to the farm. As much as we're able to bring that down with the news we're hearing now, that has come down beyond before, how are we empowering farmers to look at that? So government policy around agriculture is very necessary. If that goes on, then I'm talking about my salary. Now, we can't use the rebased figure to determine salary because the real prices is still there. So every employee will expect some adjustment on an annual basis because prices of things are not going down. I'll give a typical example. You enter a fuel station and you hear price of fuel has gone down, but the price on the face of the pump is still the same. Now you enter a fuel station tomorrow and prices went up overnight. The price on the pump has changed. So why is the price not going down when the price of the products went down? Why did it suddenly go up when the price of this product went up? So there's something has to be about price control, especially in so many areas where there are volatility, and that we're still seeing. So for an average worker is looking at that disposable income, being able to be enough for him to keep body and soul together and still be able to live with full sanity. So that would be their, whether you rebase or not, they're just looking at how much do I have? Is my disposable income increasing or is shrinking? Whatever you rebase, I don't want to know. I want to get to the market. If I buy something for 5 naira yesterday or 15 naira yesterday, I want to see it come to 40 or 30. That's what everybody's thinking about.
And that's instructive because some would say that towards the end of the year, the price of food items will drop towards the end of the year to the beginning. But afterwards, as we approach Ramadan, the price of foodstuff will suddenly, go up without any external influences, and you talk about price volatility, but some would say that, it's a free market economy, that we cannot, introduce any form of price control.
I think most businesses will look at it from that angle. But I think there should be a threshold. Because if we keep saying it's a free market, then it gets to a stage that the ordinary man on the street is unable to be able to put body and soul together. Then we have issues about security. People will just want to get it the way they want it. And at times I get some messages on my phone and they're saying, we've not eaten. And I was like, I feel like, okay, what can I do? But I can't do that for everybody that sends messages to me. Neither can all of us line up in front of the government house to say this is what people are going through. So I think there should still be some form of control. Maybe not telling businesses how to dictate their price, but there should be a threshold. I look at a country like Rwanda, and I know what they do. They may be small compared to Nigeria, but let's also look at other countries that are as big as we are. How are they able to manage prices? They may not necessarily hold on to the bill and say you must not sell beyond this. But I believe prices at times, businesses regulate prices at times when they see the reaction of the people, consumption pattern, the profits not going up, the sales not going up. They'll probably be forced to say, let's do some. And that's within the business. But I believe there's a government involvement that needs to come in. I'm not saying you should restrict everybody to a particular price, but government should see when things are going out of the curve and then see how to try to bring it down and regulate that.
So government should bring some. Okay, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Okay, as we begin to wind down, let's take you to Prof in winding down. A couple of issues I would like you to address in maybe 1 minute. One of which is the NPC starting the meeting today. You've sat in that room as well. Tomorrow we're going to get the numbers. So what should we be expected? Because now we're talking about economic agents. Madam has been defending the household that is the most important and which is the correct one. Government maybe have a bragging right now because it looks good on paper, but the firms are waiting for the numbers from the CBN. Should we be expecting a hold, a hike, or go dovish at some point? Because all of this affects the business climate in general.
Okay, I think we should also know that 24.48 is still one of the highest inflation rates in the world. So it's not it's not as if it is saying that Nigeria has low inflation. Inflation rate is still one of the highest in the world. So government should still be concerned about that. But talking about the CBA, when the MPC has they have very good data, most recent data, extensive data in taking their decisions. But I'm sure they're in a more comfortable position now than they were in the last meeting in November. Now, I mean, the policy rate is above inflation. So we have real interest rate now, which is good for them, which is good for the economy. So I think, because I don't know what is happening to liquidity growth. They will have that data in terms of monetary surfeit in the economy. But basically, I think it's most likely that they're going to hold. So that they see where this is going and look at maybe the meeting in March and see the trend, okay? But, where would they are now? With the data showing that the interest rate is positive, we have real interest rate, positive real interest rate. I think that will give them, some confidence or to want to hold, to pause and then see what will happen subsequently. Is it going to be going up or is it going to be coming down? And then if inflation rate trends downward, they may start to, after some time, they may try to actually rewind and sorting the monetary policy, monetary constraints.
So we'll wait to see how that plays out. Everything actually, well, the scriptures say works together for good, but we'll see how this works together, hopefully for the good of Nigerians. But Dr. Falcon, final point I want you to make, since you have a very strong background in taxation and the rest, a lot of people are seeing this ATM hike as another form of taxation. And, they always say taxes in the real sense should be good because it's meant to oil the system and make sure services improve. But Dr. Falcon, a lot of people are not exactly happy because they've gone through a lot from POS operators. So now they go to the ATMs and it's just like another POS operator, but it's like a machine. Is it fair?
I think it's the wrong timing. I think it's the wrong timing. We're currently talking about reform, overall reform. And the reform, we see what that has generated in the tax reform, policy reform, fiscal policy reform. We see so many stories and reactions it has generated. But this is actually not tax. It's a bit, when I saw this information on tax, I was like, people need to understand, it's an additional income to the banks. And the whole essence of this is for the banks to expand, have more ATM. But that's also the other side of it. If we're saying we want to go cashless, and we're saying we have more ATM, then that means people should make more withdrawals. Now, the whole essence of cashless is to make people do transfers, do some other things. But the people that actually go and do the cash transactions, if you look at them, they're actually not in that category of people that do transfers. They have to. And maybe one instance where you have to go to an ATM to withdraw. Now, what it means now is you do 3 withdrawals, you don't pay anything. But now, you do 3 withdrawals, you pay as high as 300 on top of that withdrawal. That's if you are using your own bank's ATM. Now, you now decide to go into a mall. I believe maybe for those who have the luxury of enjoying a mall, then you pay more for that because there are additional charges. It's really not tax. It's a fee to the bank. I did a calculation that if you have 1,000 customers that do 50 transactions each, if you have 100 naira that you have to charge them for that ATM transactions they do, that's 5 million additional income to the bank.
Just like that.
Yeah. And if that amount is not VAT inclusive, which means there's a 7.5% on that 5 million. So if you add that, that's about 700,000 plus. So for every consumer using the ATM, you're contributing 5 million to that particular bank, and you're also paying VAT if there's VAT on it. So those are some of the things that people have not seen the impact. Now, the whole essence is to build more ATM. But I remember we had the issue about super profits by banks.
Right.
That is there. We had this windfall tax that came up just to see how the government can take a chunk of what the banks got during the foreign exchange boom. Now, this is another era. I guess it's not the right time.
There you go. And I know a lot of people have given the CBN an ultimatum to reverse it, but we'll see how this plays out. But we have to thank you so much, Dr. Titilayo Fowoko, member of Governing Council of a Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN. Thank you, and thank you for making a case for the family, for Nigeria. We've also been speaking with Professor Adeola Adenikinju, President of the Nigerian Economic Society, Professor, Department of Economics, University of Ibadan, the first and the best. Thank you, Prof, for your time.
It's biased, Gaudi.
Thank you so very much, Gaudi.
I'm sorry, I'm biased like that. But we'll take a quick break, and when we return, it's a very sad tale in Benue State. The death recorded this week is nothing to write home about. And once again, we dig deep into that matter. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.